He didn't know that the water splashing against her cheap shoes was the most expensive mistake of his life. The glass shattered first. Then came the water, cold, deliberate, meant to humiliate. It soaked through Elena's worn canvas sneakers, the ones held together with duct tape, because her husband said her paychecks were her problem, not his. Every fork in the Azure Heights stopped midair. Every conversation died. 200 eyes turned to watch a man in a $3,000 suit destroy his wife in front of Florida's most powerful people. Julian didn't flinch. He smiled. "You're just a waitress, Elena," he sneered, loud enough for the entire bistro to hear. "You smell like grease and failure. Don't expect to sit at my table tonight. Or ever again." Elena stood frozen. Not because she was weak, but because she was calculating. Julian had forgotten where he came from. He thought he was untouchable. He thought he was the king of Miami. He was wrong. Because the woman he just humiliated wasn't just a waitress. She was about to become his worst nightmare. Why would a man treat the mother of his children like trash in public? And more importantly, why was Elena smiling as she wiped the water off her face? Before we go any further, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here or haven't joined us yet, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. "You're embarrassing me," he hissed, loud enough for the table to hear. "Go back to the kitchen where you belong." Elena stood frozen, tray trembling in her hands. She wasn't just his wife. She was the woman who worked 3 jobs so he could pass the bar exam. The woman who sold her mother's jewelry so he could afford his first tailored suit. But Julian had forgotten. Success has a way of erasing memory. The lawyers at his table, men from Maryland with Rolexes and offshore accounts, laughed. One of them leaned over and whispered something that made Julian's grin widen. Elena caught the word downgrade. She turned and walked back to the kitchen, water dripping from her apron. She didn't cry. Not yet. That afternoon, Julian hosted what he called a power lunch. 5 attorneys, 2 hedge fund managers, 1 congressman's aide, all of them there to celebrate Julian's promotion to senior partner at Vance and Associates. He'd ordered the most expensive wine on the menu, a bottle that cost more than Elena made in a month. When she approached with the appetizers, Julian looked right through her. Not at her. Through her. Like she was air. "Excuse me, miss," one of the lawyers said, snapping his fingers. "Can you tell the real server we're ready for the main course?" Elena's throat tightened. "I am the real server, sir." The table erupted in laughter. Julian didn't defend her. He joined in. "She's new," Julian said smoothly, waving his hand like he was shooing a fly. "Probably can't tell a Pinot from a Merlot." That night, Elena cleaned the kitchen in silence while the other staff whispered. She'd heard the rumors. Julian and some younger woman. Late nights at the office. A second phone he kept in his gym bag. But rumors weren't proof. So she waited. At midnight, she drove home to their mansion in Coral Gables. The gate code had been changed. She tried 3 times before Julian finally answered his phone. "Use the side entrance," he said coldly. "I don't want the neighbors seeing your car in the driveway." Inside, the house smelled like perfume that wasn't hers. Julian was in his office, door half open. Elena walked past, heading for the bedroom, but something made her stop. A leather briefcase sat on his desk. Unlocked. She shouldn't have looked. But she did. The folder inside was labeled Dissolution of Marriage, Vance versus Vance. Dated 3 weeks ago. Her hands shook as she flipped through the pages. Julian had already filed, already hired a lawyer, already divided their assets, heavily in his favor. The joint savings account they'd built together? Drained. $47,000. Gone. A receipt slipped out from between the pages. Cartier, diamond engagement ring, $68,000. Elena's knees buckled. He'd used their savings to buy another woman a ring. She closed the folder carefully, exactly how she'd found it. Then she walked to the guest bedroom and locked the door. At 2 in the morning, she heard Julian on the phone in the hallway. His voice was low, but the walls were thin. "The waitress is almost out. I'll be a free man by Monday. Then we can go public. Beatrice," the 26-year-old paralegal he'd hired last spring. Elena pressed her hand over her mouth to keep from screaming. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown California number. "Ms. Reyes, this is Clayton Moore from the Moore and Harrington Estate Group. We've been trying to reach you regarding the Castellano Trust. Please call at your earliest convenience. Time-sensitive matter." Elena stared at the message. Castellano. That name stirred something in her memory. A family she'd helped years ago when she worked at a hotel in San Diego. An old man who'd tipped her $100 and told her she had the heart of someone destined for greatness. She'd thought he was just being kind. But now, at 2 in the morning, with her marriage burning down around her, that text felt like a lifeline thrown from the past. She saved the number, and for the first time in hours, Elena smiled. He thought she was invisible because she served him. Are you ignoring someone in your life who is actually your biggest support? Subscribe now so you don't realize their value only after they're gone. Elena didn't sleep that night. She sat in the guest bedroom, staring at the text message from California, trying to remember every detail about the Castellano family. It was 7 years ago. She'd been working the front desk at the Ocean View Grand in San Diego, pulling double shifts to keep their tiny apartment in Texas. Julian was in his second year of law school, drowning in student loans and stress. Elena would send him half her paycheck every week, keeping just enough to survive on ramen and hope. One evening, an elderly man in a wheelchair arrived without a reservation. The hotel was fully booked, but something about his tired eyes made Elena call in a favor. She found him a suite, brought him tea, listened when he talked about his late wife. His name was Vincent Castellano, tech industry pioneer, early investor in companies nobody had heard of yet. Before he left, he'd pressed a business card into her palm. "You have something rare, young lady. Kindness without agenda. If you ever need anything, call me." She never did. She'd lost the card during one of their moves. But apparently, he hadn't forgotten her. At dawn, Elena called the California number. A crisp voice answered on the first ring. "Ms. Reyes, thank you for returning our call. Mr. Castellano passed away 6 months ago. In his will, he left specific instructions regarding you." Elena's chest tightened. "I'm so sorry. He was a wonderful man." "Indeed. Ms. Reyes, are you sitting down?" She wasn't, but she found a chair. Mr. Castellano invested in a water purification startup in 2019. You may remember discussing clean water initiatives with him during his stay. Elena did remember. They'd talked for hours about drought-stricken communities. She'd mentioned reading about new filtration technology in a magazine. That company, Aquapure Technologies, was recently acquired by a multinational conglomerate. Mr. Castellano's shares were worth approximately $9 million. He's left 20% of that stake to you. The phone slipped from Elena's hand. $1.8 million. But there was more. Much more that Elena hadn't told Julian. For the past 5 years, while Julian climbed the ladder and forgot where he came from, Elena had been reading, learning. Every spare moment between shifts, she studied financial markets, tech trends, investment strategies. Julian called it her cute little hobby. He'd laugh when she talked about companies with strange names and big ideas. One of those companies was Aquapure Technologies. She'd taken her tips, $5 here, $20 there, and invested them into their stock when it was trading at $2 a share. Julian never checked their accounts, never asked where her money went. He assumed she spent it on Waitress things. Elena had bought 14,000 shares over 5 years. At yesterday's acquisition price of $63 per share, her investment was worth $882,000. Combined with the inheritance, Elena was worth $2.6 million. And Julian had no idea. That morning, Elena went to work like nothing had changed. She tied her apron, smiled at customers, and refilled coffee cups. But something was different. She carried herself straighter, looked people in the eye longer. Around noon, she noticed the black SUV. It was parked across the street from the diner, tinted windows reflecting the Florida sun. At first, she thought Julian had hired someone to follow her, gather evidence for the divorce, make her look unstable. But when her shift ended, a man in a gray suit stepped out. He wasn't threatening. He was holding an envelope. "Ms. Elena Reyes?" "Yes. I'm Marcus Webb, attorney for the Castellano Estate Trust. I apologize for the dramatic appearance. Mr. Moore thought it best to deliver these documents in person given their sensitive nature." He handed her a gold embossed card and a sealed envelope. "Inside you'll find instructions for accessing your inheritance, as well as Mr. Castellano's personal letter to you. He wanted you to know that your kindness changed the last years of his life. He died grateful." Elena's eyes burned. "Thank you." The attorney nodded and returned to the SUV. It pulled away slowly, leaving Elena standing on the sidewalk with her future in her hands. She drove to the mansion, heart pounding. Maybe she'd tell Julian everything. Maybe they could start over. Maybe the money would remind him who she was. But when she pulled up to the gate, her code still didn't work. She called Julian. No answer. She called again. Voicemail. Then she saw them. Her clothes, scattered across the front lawn like trash. Dresses she'd worn to his work parties. The blue sweater his mother gave her. Her photo albums. Everything that proved she'd ever lived there, dumped in the rain. Julian stood on the porch, arms crossed. Beatrice beside him wearing Elena's bathrobe. "You don't live here anymore," he shouted. "I filed a restraining order this morning. If you're not gone in 5 minutes, I'm calling the cops." Elena looked at Beatrice. Young, smug, wearing the robe Elena had bought on their anniversary. Julian's new fiancé smirked. "You should be thanking him. He's setting you free to find someone in your tax bracket." Elena bent down slowly, picking up a single framed photo, her and Julian on their wedding day. He'd looked at her like she was everything. She placed it face down in the wet grass. Then she got in her car and drove away. In the rearview mirror, she saw Julian laughing. He had no idea that the woman he just threw away was about to become the most dangerous decision of his life. If you were Elena, sleeping in that car while your husband slept in your bed with another woman, would you cry or would you plan? Comment cry or plan. Elena spent that night in her car. Not because she didn't have money. She had millions waiting in California. But because she needed to feel it. The cold. The humiliation. The rock bottom that Julian thought would break her. She parked behind the diner. Engine off. Windows cracked just enough to breathe. The vinyl seats smelled like grease and old coffee. Her back ached. Her eyes burned from crying. At 3 a.m, her phone rang. Julian. She almost didn't answer. But she did. "How's the view from the gutter?" His voice was slurred. "Drunk. Celebrating. I'm in our bed right now." "Well, my bed. BEA's here too. We're drinking the wine you couldn't pronounce." Elena said nothing. "You should thank me, Elena. I'm giving you a chance to find someone who doesn't mind dating down. Maybe a dishwasher? You two could compare hand soap." She hung up. Her hands shook so hard, she dropped the phone twice before managing to turn it off. The next morning, Elena reported for her shift at the diner. Her manager, a kind woman named Phyllis, took one look at her and pulled her aside. "Honey, you look like you've been through war." "I'm fine." "You're not. But you will be." Phyllis squeezed her shoulder. Table 6 just sat down. You want me to take it? Elena glanced over. A young woman. Designer purse. Too much makeup. Beatrice. No, Elena said quietly. I've got it. She approached the table with her notepad, face neutral. Beatrice looked up and smiled. Not a friendly smile. A victory smile. Oh my God, you're still working here? Julian said you'd probably quit by now. You know, out of shame. Elena clicked her pen. What can I get you? I'll have the eggs Benedict, but make sure the hollandaise isn't too heavy. I have to fit into my wedding dress next month. She held up her left hand, flashing the $68,000 ring. Julian has excellent taste, don't you think? Will that be all? Beatrice leaned back, enjoying herself. Actually, I have a question. How does it feel knowing your husband chose someone younger? Prettier? More relevant? Elena wrote down the order without looking up. And one more thing, Beatrice continued, lowering her voice. Julian told me about your kids. About how you're barely a mother because you're always here. I just want you to know, I'm going to be an amazing stepmom. They'll probably forget you even existed. That was the line. Elena's pen stopped. She looked Beatrice directly in the eyes. Your eggs will be right out. Her voice was calm. Too calm. Beatrice frowned, suddenly uncertain. That's it. No tears. No breakdown. No, ma'am. Elena walked back to the kitchen, pulled out her phone, and stopped the recording app. Beatrice had just confessed, on tape, that Julian was using the children as leverage, that he'd told her private details about the custody situation, information his lawyers specifically told him not to share. More importantly, Beatrice had casually mentioned Julian's offshore situation and how he was moving money around before the divorce finalized. Illegal. Traceable. Stupid. Elena saved the file to 3 separate cloud accounts. When she brought Beatrice her food, she included the check. And she left a penny on the table. For the tip you were planning to leave, Elena said sweetly. I thought I'd save you the trouble. Beatrice's face went red. Excuse me. Enjoy your meal, ma'am. After her shift, Elena didn't go to a motel. She went to a real estate office. Not just any office. Prestige Properties of Miami. The firm that handled 9-figure deals. She walked in wearing her grease-stained apron, hair pulled back in a messy bun, smelling like bacon and dish soap. The receptionist looked at her like she'd wandered in from a homeless shelter. Can I help you? I'd like to speak with someone about purchasing commercial property. The receptionist's smile was thin. Ma'am, our firm specializes in luxury investments. The minimum portfolio requirement is $5 million. I read your website. A young agent in an expensive suit approached, clearly trying not to laugh. Miss, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Perhaps you're looking for residential rentals? There's an office 2 blocks down. I'm looking for Marcus Delgado. The agent blinked. Mr. Delgado is the lead broker. He doesn't take walk-ins. Tell him Elena Reyes is here. He'll know the name. The receptionist and agent exchanged glances. The kind of look that said, crazy lady, call security. But the receptionist picked up the phone. Mr. Delgado? There's a woman here. Says her name is Elena Reyes. A pause. The receptionist's face went pale. Yes, sir. Right away, sir. She stood up so fast her chair rolled backward. Mr. Delgado will see you immediately. Top floor. I'll escort you personally. The young agent's smirk vanished. As Elena followed the receptionist to the elevator, she glanced back at him. You should work on your assumption skills, she said. They'll cost you commissions. When the elevator doors opened on the top floor, Marcus Delgado was waiting. He was a man in his 60s, silver-haired, wearing a watch that cost more than most cars. He smiled and extended his hand. Ms. Reyes, Mr. Castellano told me if you ever walked through my door, I was to treat you like the Queen of England. He looked at her apron. Though I admit, I expected different attire. Elena shook his hand firmly. I'm here to buy a restaurant. His smile widened. Then let's get to work. Most people watch these stories and think it'll never happen to me. But betrayal doesn't give a warning. Join our community to stay sharp and informed. Julian was having the best week of his life. The divorce papers were filed. Beatrice had moved into the mansion. His promotion was official. And best of all, Elena was gone, sleeping in her car like the failure he always knew she was. On Thursday afternoon, he walked into his favorite place in the world, the Azure Heights. It was more than a restaurant. It was a temple to success. Senators ate here. CEOs closed deals here. Julian had spent over $50,000 in this building over the past 2 years, and everyone knew his name. Mr. Vance. The hostess greeted him with a warm smile. Your usual table? Actually, Stephanie, I'm here to speak with ownership. I want to make an offer. Her smile faltered. An offer? To buy the restaurant. I have the capital, and I think it's time I owned a piece of Miami's finest. What Julian didn't know was that 3 days earlier, the current owner had received an offer he couldn't refuse. Cash. No inspection period. No contingencies. 10% above asking price. The sale closed in 48 hours. But nobody had told Julian yet. I'll let Mr. Hendricks know you'd like to speak with him, Stephanie said carefully. Julian spent the afternoon making calls. He contacted his banker, arranged a meeting to discuss the $5 million loan, and sent Beatrice a text. About to own the best restaurant in Florida. We'll have our wedding reception here. That evening, his banker called back. Julian, we need to talk about your accounts. What about them? You've been flagged for suspicious activity. Large cash withdrawals. Transfers to offshore accounts that weren't disclosed during your last financial review. The compliance team is asking questions. Julian's stomach dropped. Who flagged me? An anonymous shareholder reported irregularities. We're required to investigate. A shareholder? I don't have shareholders. I have a law firm. Someone with access to your financial footprint filed a formal complaint with the State Banking Commission. Until this is resolved, we can't approve any new loans. Julian hung up and immediately called his accountant. Voicemail. He called his offshore banker in the Cayman Islands. Straight to voicemail. Something was wrong. The next day, Elena walked into the law offices of Whitmore and Associates in Virginia, the most expensive, most ruthless legal team on the East Coast. The same firm Julian had bragged about being untouchable. She wore a black suit this time, hair professionally styled, heels that clicked like a countdown on the marble floor. The senior partner, Catherine Whitmore, greeted her personally. Ms. Reyes, I've reviewed your case. Fascinating situation. Can you beat him? Catherine smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a shark who just smelled blood. Ms. Reyes, by the time I'm done, Julian Vance won't be able to get a job at a drive-thru. But I need to know, how far are you willing to go? Elena didn't hesitate. As far as the law allows. Then let's begin. Catherine opened a file. Your husband has been embezzling from client escrow accounts to fund his lifestyle. Small amounts. Difficult to trace. But not impossible. We have a forensic accountant who can prove it. How long will it take? We already have everything we need. One of his associates came forward yesterday. Apparently, Julian made some enemies at the firm. Elena leaned forward. What do you need from me? Sign the retainer. Give us access to your recordings of Beatrice. And let us work. Elena signed. As she left the building, her phone buzzed. A message from Marcus Delgado. Beatrice Cole has $127,000 in credit card debt. Defaulted student loans. 3 collection agencies. I can buy her debt for 18 cents on the dollar. Do you want me to proceed? Elena stared at the message. Beatrice, the woman wearing her bathrobe, sleeping in her bed, raising her children, was drowning in debt Julian knew nothing about. She texted back, Buy it all. 20 minutes later, Beatrice officially owed Elena over $100,000. And Elena owned the right to collect. On Friday morning, Julian arrived at his law office to find chaos. Movers were carrying out his furniture. "What the hell is going on?" he shouted. His secretary, pale and shaking, handed him a letter. The building was sold. The new owner is liquidating assets. We have 72 hours to vacate. Sold? To who? A private LLC. They didn't disclose the buyer. Julian's hands trembled as he read the notice. At the bottom, in small print, property acquired by Waitress Wins, LLC. His blood ran cold. That afternoon, Julian drove to the Azure Heights for lunch. He needed to think, to regroup. But when he pulled up, he saw something that made his vision blur. A sold sign. He parked and ran inside. The hostess, Stephanie, looked at him with something close to pity. "Mr. Vance, I'm sorry, but we're under new management. Your membership has been suspended." "Suspended? I've spent a fortune here." "I understand, but the new owner left specific instructions." "Who bought this place?" Stephanie glanced at her computer screen, then back at Julian. "Waitress Wins, LLC." Julian felt the floor tilt. "That's impossible. That's Elena." "I wouldn't know, sir." He turned to leave, but Stephanie called after him. "Mr. Vance, the owner left a message for you." "What message?" She said, "Tell him I'm in the kitchen, and I'm ready to discuss that glass of water." Be honest. Is it wrong to ruin a man's career for a personal grudge? Or is this just justice? Comment right or wrong. Julian didn't go to the kitchen. Not yet. He sat in his car for 20 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel, trying to understand how his life had collapsed in less than a week. Elena was supposed to be broken, homeless, begging him for mercy. Instead, she'd bought his favorite restaurant and his office building. With what money? He called his lawyer. "We need to freeze her assets immediately. She's hiding something." "Julian, we've been through this. She's a waitress. She has nothing to freeze. She just bought 2 properties worth millions." A pause. "That's not possible." "Well, it happened. Do your job and find out where she got the money, or I'll find someone who can." He hung up and dialed Beatrice. She'd been distant lately, distracted. He needed her support right now. Baby, something's happening. Elena is. I can't talk right now." Her voice was tight, stressed. "Why not? I just got a letter from a collections agency. They're threatening to sue me for $130,000. I don't even know who these people are." Julian's stomach twisted. "What's the name of the agency?" Recovery Solutions Group. It says they purchased my debt from multiple creditors." "Who owns the agency?" "It doesn't say. It's listed under some LLC. Waitress Wins. That's a weird name." Julian closed his eyes. I have to go." "Julian, I'm freaking out here. Can you help me or not?" "I'll call you back." He hung up and drove home, or tried to. But when he reached the gate, his code didn't work. He tried again, and again. Then his phone rang. Unknown number. "Mr. Vance, this is Officer Mendez with the Miami-Dade County Sheriff's Office. We've received a notice that you're attempting to access a property you no longer have rights to." "What?" "This is my house. According to county records, the mortgage was sold 4 days ago to a private entity. The new owner has filed a no trespass order on my own house. It's no longer your house, sir. I suggest you contact your attorney." The line went dead. Julian sat in his car, staring at the mansion he'd bought to prove he'd made it. The gate he'd closed to keep Elena out. Now he was the one locked outside. His phone buzzed. A calendar reminder. Engagement party. The Azure Heights, 7 p.m. He'd sent the invitations weeks ago. 50 guests. Colleagues, clients, judges, everyone who mattered in Miami's legal world. The party was in 3 hours. Julian drove back to the Azure Heights. He had to cancel, had to explain, had to. When he arrived, the parking lot was full. Valets in crisp uniforms guided luxury cars into spaces. A red carpet led to the entrance. His party was happening. Without his permission, he walked inside and froze. The restaurant had been transformed. White orchids everywhere. A string quartet in the corner. Champagne towers. His guest list, every single person he'd invited, was already here. But this wasn't his party anymore. The staff stood in a line near the entrance, military straight, hands behind their backs. They weren't smiling. They were watching him. Stephanie approached, her earlier pity replaced with cold professionalism. "Mr. Vance, the owner is expecting you. I need to speak with her. She knows. Follow me." Julian's colleagues turned to watch him pass. Their expressions ranged from confusion to barely concealed amusement. Judge Holloway, who'd officiated Julian's wedding to Elena, raised his champagne glass slightly. The gesture felt like mockery. Stephanie led Julian toward the kitchen doors, the same doors Elena used to push through carrying trays of food while he pretended not to know her. She stopped. "The owner asked me to give you a message before you enter." "What message?" she said. "Remember that glass of water?" Interest has been accruing. Julian pushed past her and slammed through the kitchen doors. The kitchen had been cleared. No staff, no heat, no noise. Just a single chair in the center of the room. And sitting in that chair, wearing the same stained apron from the day he humiliated her, was Elena. Behind her stood 5 people in suits. Julian recognized 3 of them, the top attorneys from Whitmore and Associates in Virginia. The other 2 wore FBI badges. Elena stood slowly. She didn't smile, didn't gloat. She just looked at him the way you'd look at a stranger. "Hello, Julian." His voice came out as a whisper. "What did you do?" "I didn't do anything." "You did." She gestured to the attorneys. "These people would like to discuss your creative accounting practices. Apparently, embezzling from client escrow accounts is frowned upon. You can't prove that." One of the FBI agents stepped forward. "Mr. Vance, we have 5 years of banking records, testimony from your former associate Marcus Chun, and recordings provided by Ms. Beatrice Cole." Julian's blood turned to ice. Beatrice wouldn't. Ms. Cole became very cooperative once she learned we could make her debt disappear, Elena said quietly. "Turns out, when you own someone's financial future, they're willing to tell you everything." The room tilted. Julian grabbed the counter to steady himself. "Why are you doing this?" His voice cracked. "I gave you everything." Elena's eyes hardened. "You gave me nothing. I earned everything. I put you through school. I worked 3 jobs while you studied. I believed in you when no one else did." She took a step closer. "And the moment you succeeded, you threw water on me like I was trash." "Elena, please. You told our children I was an embarrassment. You drained our savings to buy another woman a ring. You locked me out of my own home in the rain." Her voice stayed level, calm. "So yes, Julian, I'm doing this. Not because I'm cruel, but because you need to learn what it feels like to lose everything." She nodded to the attorneys. One of them opened a folder. "Mr. Vance, you're being charged with wire fraud, embezzlement, and tax evasion. The state bar will be notified within the hour. Your assets have been frozen pending investigation." Julian looked at Elena, desperate. "I'll fix this. I'll make it right. Just tell me what you want." Elena picked up her apron and folded it neatly. "I want you to remember this moment. Every time you look in a mirror, every time you apply for a job, every time someone treats you like you don't matter." She walked toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and Julian, your credit cards were declined because I bought the debt. Your car is being repossessed because I own the loan. And your engagement party." She glanced back at him one last time. "It's actually a fundraiser for my new foundation that trains single mothers in business skills." She left him standing in the kitchen, The same kitchen where she'd cried after he humiliated her. Only now, Julian was the one crying. If you're still not subscribing, tell us why in the comments. Is it because you think Julian might actually be right? Let's hear your wildest take. Julian stood alone in the kitchen, hands shaking, surrounded by people who held his entire future in their briefcases. The door opened behind him. More footsteps. More witnesses. He turned and felt his knees buckle. The board of directors from Vance and Associates. All 7 of them. The men who'd promoted him just 2 weeks ago. The same men who'd toasted his success at that power lunch while Elena served them water. They weren't smiling now. What is this? Julian's voice cracked. Elena, what are you doing? Elena gestured to the attorneys. Gentlemen, if you'd please explain the charges. The lead attorney from Whitmore and Associates stepped forward. Mr. Vance, over the past 18 months, you've systematically transferred funds from client escrow accounts into personal offshore holdings. The total amount exceeds $400,000. That's a lie. Julian spun toward the board. She's making this up. She's angry about the divorce, and she's trying to destroy me. One of the board members, Gerald Hutchins, the senior partner, spoke quietly. Julian, we've seen the evidence. Bank transfers, forged signatures, falsified account statements. She fabricated it. You know what she is. She's just a bitter waitress who can't accept that I've moved on. Elena didn't flinch. She simply pulled out her phone and pressed play. Julian's voice filled the kitchen. A recording from 3 weeks ago, crystal clear. Marcus, listen to me. The Pemberton escrow has $600,000 sitting in it. The case won't settle for another year. I can pull 50 now, replace it before anyone notices. I've done it 4 times already. It's foolproof. The voice of Marcus Chun, his former associate, responded. Julian, that's embezzlement. If we get caught, we won't. I'm untouchable. I'm about to make partner. They need me. The recording stopped. Julian's face drained of color. Where did you get that? Marcus came forward 2 days ago, Elena said. He's cooperating with investigators in exchange for immunity. He gave them everything. Gerald shook his head slowly. Julian, the firm has no choice. We're terminating you effective immediately. The state bar will be notified within the hour. You can't do this. I made this firm millions. You stole from our clients. You've destroyed our reputation. Julian looked around desperately. Beatrice. Where's Beatrice? She'll tell you Elena is lying. As if summoned, the kitchen door opened. Beatrice walked in, but she wasn't on Julian's side anymore. She was carrying a folder, her face pale and guilty. She handed it directly to Elena. I'm sorry, Beatrice whispered. I didn't know who you really were. Julian stared at her, betrayed. B, what are you doing? What I should have done weeks ago. Beatrice's voice trembled. Elena owns my debt, Julian. Over $100,000. She offered to forgive it completely if I told the truth. What truth? About the offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. The ones you set up in my name so they couldn't be traced to you. She looked at Elena. I gave her everything. Account numbers. Transfer records. Passwords. Julian lunged forward, reaching for the folder. Give me that. Before he could take 2 steps, 3 security guards appeared. Men in black suits with Texas Security Solutions patches on their shoulders. They blocked him effortlessly, one hand each on his chest. Don't touch me, Julian shouted. This is assault. The head of security spoke calmly. Sir, you're on private property. The owner has asked you to remain still. I suggest you comply. Elena stepped closer to Julian, close enough that only he could hear her next words. You said I smell like grease and failure, Julian. Her voice was soft, deadly. Actually, that's the smell of the lunch I just bought for your replacement. She handed the folder to Gerald. Inside, you'll find a full forensic audit of Julian's activities, a list of affected clients, and a proposed restitution plan. My attorneys have also prepared a statement for the press. Gerald opened the folder. His expression darkened with every page. There's one more thing, Elena added. I've purchased the building that houses your firm. Your lease expires in 30 days. I'm not renewing it. Julian's world shattered completely. The board members filed out in silence, taking the evidence with them. The FBI agents approached Julian. Mr. Vance, you're not under arrest yet, but we strongly advise you to retain counsel. Federal charges are pending. They left. The security team remained, watching Julian like he might bolt. Beatrice stood near the door, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, Julian, but I can't go to prison for you. You used me, he whispered. No, Elena corrected. You used her, just like you used me. The difference is, she realized it before it was too late. Beatrice left without looking back. Julian sank to his knees on the kitchen floor, the same floor Elena had mopped 100 times while he sat in the dining room pretending she didn't exist. Why, he choked out. Why are you doing this? Elena crouched down to his level, her eyes level with his. Because you needed to learn that people aren't disposable. That waitresses and janitors and dishwashers aren't beneath you. They're just people trying to survive. And sometimes, she stood up, brushing off her apron. Sometimes those people are far more powerful than you ever imagined. She walked toward the exit, then paused. Oh, and Julian, the guests at your engagement party? They're actually here for a different celebration. We're announcing the launch of Waitress Wins Foundation, a nonprofit that provides business training and capital to service workers who want to build their own futures. You stole my party. No, I bought it. There's a difference. Elena left him there, alone in the kitchen, surrounded by the ruins of his arrogance. Outside, the party continued. Champagne flowed. People laughed. But Julian heard none of it. All he heard was the sound of his own heartbeat and the memory of water splashing against cheap shoes. Julian lost his firm because he lost his heart. If you're watching this and haven't called your parents or spouse today to say thank you, you're already at risk. Subscribe to remind yourself of what truly matters. Julian left the Azure Heights through the back entrance, hiding from the guests who'd come to celebrate his downfall. He drove straight to the mansion in Coral Gables, the one he'd locked Elena out of just days ago. But when he reached the gate, his code didn't work. He tried again. Error. He tried Beatrice's code. Error. He tried the master override code that only he was supposed to know. Error. Julian slammed his fists against the steering wheel. Then he saw them. His belongings, piled in trash bags on the front lawn. Suits he'd spent thousands on. His golf clubs. His law degree in its expensive frame. Everything that proved he'd been successful, dumped like garbage in the rain. A security guard he'd never seen before approached his car window. Sir, you need to leave the property. This is MY property. The guard shook his head. No, sir. This property was sold 3 days ago. The new owner has filed a no trespass order. If you don't leave, I'll have to call the police. Who owns it now? I'm not at liberty to say. But Julian already knew. He grabbed what he could from the lawn, a suitcase of clothes, his laptop, and drove to a motel off Highway 95. The kind with hourly rates and a neon sign that flickered. The room cost $49 a night. It smelled like cigarettes and regret. Julian sat on the bed and called his lawyer, Douglas Finch, the man who'd promised him an ironclad prenuptial agreement. Douglas, she took everything. The house, the restaurant, my office building. Tell me the prenup protects my assets. A long pause. Julian, there's a problem with the prenup. What problem? You failed to disclose your offshore accounts during the financial discovery process. That's fraud. The entire agreement is void. Julian's vision blurred. What does that mean? It means Elena is entitled to half of everything you own during the marriage. And since she can prove you had assets, the judge will likely award her more. Possibly everything. How is that legal? You committed fraud, Julian. The law doesn't protect criminals. Julian hung up and immediately started calling his connections. Judges he'd played golf with. Politicians he'd donated to. Influential friends in Washington who owed him favors. Every single one sent him to voicemail. He tried Judge Holloway, who'd been at the party tonight. The call connected. "Carl, it's Julian. I need your help." "Elena is." "Julian, I can't talk to you." "What? Why not?" "Because you're about to be indicted on federal charges. If I'm seen associating with you, it could compromise my position. I'm sorry, but don't call this number again." Click. Julian tried Congressman Bradshaw. Voicemail. Senator Mitchell. Voicemail. His college roommate who worked at the Justice Department. Blocked number. One by one, everyone he'd built his network with abandoned him. He was toxic now. Untouchable in the worst way. His phone rang. Unknown number. "Mr. Vance, this is Patricia Odom from First National Bank. We need to discuss your firm's operating line of credit." "What about it?" "The loan has been called in. Full payment is due within 30 days. That's a $2 million loan. We have a 5-year term. The debt was sold to a private equity firm. They have the legal right to demand immediate repayment under the acceleration clause." "Who bought the debt?" Silence. "Ms. Odom, who bought my firm's debt. An entity called Waitress Holdings, LLC. Julian felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. Elena didn't just destroy his career. She bought the debt that kept his firm running. Without that operating capital, Vance and Associates would collapse within weeks. He stumbled outside the motel room and sat on the curb, head in his hands. A process server approached. "Young guy, clipboard in hand." "Julian Vance." "Yeah, you've been served." The man handed him a thick envelope and walked away. Julian opened it with shaking hands. Federal subpoena. Tax evasion. Wire fraud. Conspiracy to commit financial crimes. Trial date set for 8 months from now. He was going to prison. His phone rang again. Douglas Finch. "Julian, the state bar just called. They're scheduling an emergency hearing to suspend your license. Can we fight it? Not with the evidence Elena's team provided. You're done, Julian. They aren't just taking your money. They're coming for your license. Your career. Everything." Julian dropped the phone. He sat on that curb for 2 hours, watching cars pass, watching people live their normal lives while his burned to ash. A text came through from an unknown number. "You once asked me what the view from the gutter looked like. Now you know. E." Julian read it 3 times. Then he did something he hadn't done since his father's funeral. He cried. Not quiet tears. Loud, broken sobs that made passing strangers cross to the other side of the street. He'd lost his career, his home, his money, his reputation, and the woman he'd thrown water on was the one holding the match. Would you have been as merciful as Elena, or would you have let Julian rot in that cell? Comment mercy or justice. 6 months later, Julian stood in front of a small diner in Fargo, North Dakota, filling out a job application. His hand still shook when he wrote his name. The federal trial had been postponed twice, but the state bar hearing had gone exactly as predicted. License suspended. Career over. His name was poison in legal circles from Miami to Seattle. He'd fled to North Dakota because nobody knew him here. No news coverage. No former colleagues. Just cold wind and empty highways. The diner manager, a woman named Ruth with tired eyes and flour on her apron, looked at his application. Says here you worked in Florida? Yes, ma'am. Why'd you leave? Personal reasons. She studied him for a moment. You ever worked in a kitchen before? No, ma'am. Can you show up on time? Yes, ma'am. Minimum wage. 6-day weeks. No benefits. You want it? Julian swallowed his pride. Or what was left of it. Yes, ma'am. Start tomorrow. 5 a.m. The work destroyed him. His back ached from standing 12-hour shifts. His hands blistered from scrubbing dishes. The other staff, mostly single mothers and college dropouts, treated him like he was invisible, just like he'd treated Elena. Customers snapped their fingers at him, called him boy, even though he was 43, left pennies for tips with notes that said, "Get a real job." One afternoon, a man in an expensive suit sat at the counter. He ordered coffee and eggs, then complained that the eggs were overcooked. "Take this back and tell the cook if he can't do his job, maybe he should find a new career." Julian stood there, holding the plate, feeling the weight of every cruel word he'd ever said to Elena. "Yes, sir. I'll have them remake it." The man didn't even look at him. Julian went to the kitchen and leaned against the wall, fighting back tears. This was his life now. This was justice. One evening, after his shift, Julian walked outside and found someone waiting by his car. Elena. She looked different, confident, rested. She wore a simple coat and jeans, but somehow she seemed taller than he remembered. "Hello, Julian." He couldn't speak. "I wanted to show you something," she said, handing him a brochure. It was for the Waitress Wins Foundation, a training center in Newark, New Jersey. Bright photos of women learning business skills. Smiling. Hopeful. "We've trained over 200 women so far," Elena said. "Single mothers. Immigrants. People who've been told their whole lives that serving others means they're worth less. We teach them they're worth everything." Julian stared at the brochure. "Why are you here?" "Because I want to offer you a deal." She pulled out a legal document. "This is a petition to drop the federal charges. Wire fraud, tax evasion, all of it. I've spoken with the prosecutors. If I withdraw my cooperation, their case falls apart." Julian's heart pounded. "What do you want?" "Sign over your parental rights to our children." The words hit him like a physical blow. "What? You haven't called them in 6 months, Julian. You forgot their birthdays. You chose Beatrice over them. You chose money over them. You chose yourself over them." Her voice stayed calm. "I'm giving you a choice now. Your freedom or your family." Julian looked at the papers, then at Elena. "If I don't sign, then the trial proceeds. You'll likely get 8 to 10 years in a federal facility in Colorado. By the time you get out, they'll be adults. They won't know you anyway. You can't do this." "I can. And I am." She handed him a pen. Julian's hands trembled. He thought about his son, Jackson, his daughter, Riley, the way they used to run to him when he came home from work, back when he still cared. He thought about prison, about losing what little freedom he had left. He looked at Elena. "If I sign, the charges disappear?" "Completely." Julian took the pen. He signed his name on the line, giving up his children to save himself. As he handed the papers back, Elena's expression didn't change. "You know what's interesting, Julian?" She folded the document carefully. "I already dropped the charges 3 days ago. The prosecutors called me and asked for leniency. I agreed. You were never going to trial." Julian's blood turned cold. "Then why?" "Because I wanted to see if you'd choose them. If, when it mattered most, you'd put your children first." She put the papers in her bag. "You didn't. You chose yourself, just like you always do. You lied to me." "No. I gave you a choice. You made it." Elena started walking toward her car, then stopped. "The debt I bought from the bank? I forgave it. Your firm's partners bought you out for a fraction of what it was worth, but at least they have jobs. Beatrice paid off her collections and moved to Oregon. She's doing well." Elena turned back to face him. "I could have destroyed everyone connected to you, Julian. But I didn't. Because revenge without mercy isn't justice. It's just cruelty. Then why take my kids?" "I didn't take them. You gave them up. There's a difference." She got in her car and drove away. Julian stood in the parking lot of a diner in North Dakota, holding a pen that had just signed away the last good thing in his life. And he finally understood. Elena hadn't destroyed him. He destroyed himself. He chose his freedom over his kids. If that made your blood boil, hit the like button for every single mother out there doing it alone. 3 months later, the Azure Heights in Miami was unrecognizable. The entire building had been renovated. What was once a restaurant for Florida's elite was now the headquarters of Waitress Wins Foundation. Training rooms, computer labs, a commercial kitchen where women learned culinary business management. Tonight was the grand opening gala. 500 people filled the main hall. Business leaders, philanthropists, politicians, and dozens of women who'd graduated from the program. Women who now own their own restaurants, catering companies, and food trucks across the country. Elena stood backstage, wearing a simple black dress. Not designer, not expensive, just elegant. Her children, Jackson and Riley, stood beside her. They were smiling. Proud. "You ready, Mom?" Riley asked. Elena squeezed her daughter's hand. "I think so." The lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the stage. Elena walked out to thunderous applause. She stood at the podium, looking out at faces that once would have intimidated her. Senators, CEOs, the same people who used to snap their fingers for her attention. Now they were standing to honor her. "Thank you," Elena began. "Most of you don't know my story. You see this foundation. You see these beautiful faces of women who've rebuilt their lives. But you don't know where it started." She paused. "It started with a glass of water, and a man who thought my worth was measured by my job title instead of my character." The room went silent. I was a waitress. I still am, in my heart. Because being a waitress taught me something that no business degree ever could: how to serve without ego, how to work without recognition, how to give dignity to every person I meet, regardless of whether they give it back. She looked around the room. This foundation exists because someone once believed in me when I had nothing. His name was Vincent Castellano. He saw value in a hotel clerk who brought him tea and listened to his stories. And when he passed away, he left me the resources to build something that honors every person who's ever been called just anything. Elena gestured to the screens behind her. Photos appeared. The tech company she'd invested in. Aquapure Technologies. Many of you know Aquapure as a water purification company. What you might not know is that I wasn't just an investor. I was the lead systems architect. Gasps rippled through the crowd. For 5 years, while I served coffee and eggs, I spent my nights designing filtration systems for communities without clean water. I used my tips to buy prototypes. I tested models in my kitchen sink. And when Vincent Castellano heard about my work, he didn't just invest money, he invested belief. The photos changed. Villages in Kenya with clean water wells. Schools in rural Texas with new filtration systems. Hospitals in Louisiana with purified supplies. This uniform I wore. Elena gestured to a framed waitress outfit displayed on the wall. Wasn't a symbol of failure. It was a symbol of resourcefulness. Every shift bought another prototype. Every tip funded another test. This wasn't just fabric. It was armor. The crowd stood and applauded. Elena wiped her eyes. "I'm not telling you this to brag. I'm telling you because somewhere right now, there's a single mother working 2 jobs who has an idea that could change the world. There's a dishwasher who's teaching himself engineering. There's a janitor who writes poetry at 3 in the morning." Her voice grew stronger. "And I'm telling you, invest in them. Believe in them. Don't wait until they're wearing a suit to see their value." The applause was deafening. Then, from the back of the room, a door opened. An elderly man in a wheelchair rolled forward, accompanied by a nurse. Elena's hand flew to her mouth. Vincent Castellano. Alive. The room erupted in shocked whispers. Vincent reached the stage, and Elena rushed down to meet him. "Mr. Castellano? They said you died." He smiled weakly. "Almost did. But modern medicine is remarkable. I've been in recovery for 8 months. And the first thing I wanted to do when I could travel again was see this." He looked around at the foundation, at the women whose lives had changed, at the legacy Elena had built. "You took my belief and turned it into a movement," Vincent said, his voice shaking with emotion. "But there's something you don't know." He nodded to his attorney, who approached with a folder. "Elena, the technology you developed for Aquapure, the filtration system that's now in 40 countries, it's been nominated for the Global Humanitarian Innovation Prize. If you win, it comes with a $10 million grant." Elena couldn't breathe. "But more than that," Vincent continued, "I want the world to know the truth. You weren't just an investor. You weren't just a contributor. You were the mind behind the entire project. Your name should be on the patents. Your face should be on the covers of engineering journals." He handed her the folder. "This is the paperwork to transfer intellectual property rights to you. You're not just a waitress who got lucky, Elena. You're an inventor, an engineer, a visionary." The room exploded in applause. Elena opened the folder with shaking hands. Her name, listed as principal architect, lead engineer, primary innovator, everything Julian said she could never be. She looked out at the crowd, at women who believed in themselves because she believed in them first. And she realized she'd never needed Julian's approval. She'd only ever needed her own. Most people will click away now because the drama is over. But the winners stay for the lesson. Comment, "I am a winner," if you're still here. 6 months after the gala, Elena stood barefoot on a beach in Maui, watching her children play in the waves. Jackson was 13 now. Riley was 11. They laughed like they'd never known sadness. "Mom, come swim with us," Riley shouted. Elena smiled and ran toward the ocean, her feet kicking up sand, her heart lighter than it had been in years. She'd sold the mansion in Coral Gables, donated most of the money to the foundation, kept just enough to buy a small house near the beach and build a life that felt real. No more proving herself. No more chasing status. Just peace. That evening, after the kids were asleep, Elena sat on the porch and checked her email. A message from Ruth, the diner manager in North Dakota. "Thought you'd want to know, Julian's still here. Still working. He's different now. Quieter. Kinder. Yesterday, he stayed 2 hours late to help one of the single moms fix her car. Didn't ask for anything in return. Maybe people can change. Maybe." Elena closed the email and looked out at the ocean. She hoped Ruth was right. She hoped Julian learned. Not because she needed him to, but because their children deserved a father who understood the value of humility. Across the country, in that small diner in Fargo, Julian wiped down tables after closing. His back still ached. His hands were still rough. But something had shifted. A young waitress named Kelly was struggling to carry a tray of dishes. Julian took half without being asked. "Thanks," she said quietly. "No problem." She smiled at him. Not with pity, not with contempt, just gratitude. And for the first time in years, Julian felt like he'd done something that mattered. He thought about Elena, about the kids he'd signed away, about the life he'd destroyed chasing things that never made him happy. He couldn't undo the past, but maybe, just maybe, he could stop repeating it. That night, Julian wrote a letter to Jackson and Riley. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He just told them he was sorry, that he'd been wrong, that he hoped one day they'd understand he was trying to be better. He mailed it with no return address. He didn't expect a response. He just needed them to know. Back in Miami, the Azure Heights had become more than a foundation. It was a movement. 300 women trained. 50 businesses launched. 5 cities with satellite programs. The diner where Elena first worked, the place Julian used to mock, was now a community center. Free meals for families in need. job training workshops, a library with books on entrepreneurship and self-worth. On the wall, behind the main desk, hung a plaque, in memory of Vincent Castellano, who taught us that value isn't found in titles, it's found in hearts. And beneath it, displayed in a glass case, was Elena's wedding ring, the one Julian had thrown at her the day he filed for divorce. She'd melted it down and reformed it into a medal. The Waitress Wins Dignity Award, given annually to a service worker who demonstrated extraordinary character, resilience, and vision. The first recipient was a janitor in Detroit who'd put 3 kids through college while cleaning office buildings at night. The second was a hotel housekeeper in Boston who'd started a nonprofit teaching immigrant women English. The third was a dishwasher in Phoenix who'd invented a gray water recycling system for restaurants. People who'd been invisible, now celebrated. People who'd been dismissed, now honored. 1 year after the gala, Elena received a call from the Global Humanitarian Council. She'd won the Innovation Prize, $10 million, international recognition, a speech at the United Nations. But when they asked her what she wanted to be called in the press release, engineer? Inventor? Philanthropist? Elena smiled. "Just call me a waitress," she said, "because that's where I learned everything that mattered." The reporter on the other end paused. "Ms. Reyes, you're one of the most influential innovators of the decade." "Surely, I'm a waitress," Elena repeated gently. "And I'm proud of it, because she'd learned the secret that Julian never could. Power isn't about what people call you. It's about who you choose to be when no one's watching." On the beach in Maui, Elena's phone buzzed. A text from Jackson. "Mom, I read about the award. I'm proud of you. Love you." She cried. Happy tears this time. Riley came running from the house. "Mom, there's someone on TV talking about you." Elena walked inside. The news was playing a segment about Waitress Wins Foundation. The anchor smiled into the camera. "Elena Reyes proves that success isn't about where you start. It's about who you help along the way." Elena turned off the TV. She didn't need the recognition. She already had everything she wanted. Her kids, her peace, her purpose. And somewhere in North Dakota, Julian watched the same news segment. He thought about the man he used to be. The man who poured water on his wife's shoes and called her worthless. And he understood, finally, what he'd lost. Not money, not status. He'd lost the only person who ever truly believed in him. The screen faded to black. One final question lingered in the air. Who are you serving today? And more importantly, are you seeing them? If you're still not subscribing, tell me, what part of this story felt too real for you? I'm pinning the most honest response. And if this story changed how you see the people around you, even a little, hit that like button. Because the people who serve you today might be the ones who change the world tomorrow.
Hey there. Thank you so much for watching till the very end. We really appreciate your support. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And guess what? The story doesn't end here. Click on the video right here on your screen to dive into another fascinating story. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. Once again, thanks for being a part of this amazing community. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring stories that move you.